A pregnant waitress was dragged across marble floors and thrown out like trash by a billionaire's security. Hours later, a stranger stopped to help her in the rain. What she didn't know was that this man's father was the same billionaire who had just destroyed her life. And when she finally discovered the truth, she had to choose between the help she desperately needed and the rage burning in her heart. The rain fell hard on the bus stop bench where Mercy sat, holding her stomach and trying not to scream. Her uniform was torn. Her pregnant belly was exposed. And somewhere behind the tall gate of the mansion she'd just been thrown out of, wealthy people were still laughing. Nobody knew that the young man walking toward her was the son of the billionaire who had just destroyed her life. But we need to go back 3 hours. The event started at 7. Mercy Johnson arrived at the Simeon Johnson mansion in Lekki Phase 1 wearing a uniform that no longer fit. She was 7 months pregnant with twins. Her manager, Mr. Carter, forced her to work even after she begged to stay home. "If you collapse, don't stain my floor," he told her that morning. The mansion was bigger than anything she'd seen. Marble floors, crystal lights, cars worth millions, men in expensive suits, women in gold jewelry. Mercy was just there to serve drinks. She balanced a tray of champagne and moved through the crowd. Her back hurt. Her feet were swollen. But she needed this job. She had no husband, no family, just 2 babies growing inside her and a storage room floor where she slept. The heat inside was terrible. Her vision started to blur. Sweat ran down her face. The tray suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. And then it slipped. Glass shattered on marble. Everyone stopped. Everyone turned. Mercy stood there, frozen. She wanted to apologize, but her legs wouldn't move. "Security! Remove her now!" Mr. Carter shouted. 2 men grabbed her arms. "Please," she said. "I'm sorry. Get her out." They dragged her across the driveway. Her shoes scraped the pavement. Her uniform ripped. And then the worst thing happened. Her belly was exposed. Round. Heavy. Unmistakable. The crowd saw everything. Phones came out. Some people recorded. Others whispered. A few laughed. She wanted to cover herself, but the guards held her too tight. At the gate, they threw her outside. The metal gate slammed shut. She sat on the ground, shaking. Rain started. Traffic rushed past. Nobody stopped. She pulled herself up and walked to a bus stop. She sat and held her stomach. The babies were moving inside her. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know their mother had been treated like garbage in front of people who had everything. Tears mixed with rain on her face. "God," she whispered. "If you're really there, why does everyone hate us?" That's when she heard footsteps. A man in jeans and a plain shirt stopped in front of her. No suit. No bodyguards. Just a young man who looked concerned. "Madam, are you all right?" he asked gently. She looked up at him. In Lagos, kindness usually comes with a price. Rich people don't help poor people for free. She'd learned that the hard way. But the pain in her body was stronger than her fear. "I have nowhere to go," she said quietly. He nodded. "Let me help you." His name was Joshua Johnson. What she didn't know was that this stranger's father was the same billionaire who had just destroyed her. And this one act of kindness was about to change everything. If stories like this touch your heart, we'd love to have you join our family. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story of hope, justice, and second chances. And tell us, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Mercy stood outside the empty apartment in Surulere, staring at the door that wouldn't open. Her hands were shaking. Her phone showed 17 missed calls, all unanswered. Inside her body, 2 babies were growing, and the man who put them there had disappeared. To understand how she got here, we need to go back further. 7 months earlier, Mercy buried her mother in Ijebu-Ode. The funeral was small. Her mother's sisters stood at the back but didn't speak to her. When the prayers ended, Mercy asked for help. "I need money for school," she said. Her aunt looked at her like she was a stranger. "We have our own children to feed. You're 24. Go find work." The other relatives walked away without goodbye. 3 days later, Mercy boarded a bus to Lagos. 1 bag, 200 naira. No plan except survival. The city was loud and cold. You worked or you starved. She found work at Golden Crown Lounge after 2 weeks. The pay was small. The hours were long. But it was something. 3 months later, she met Adebayo. He came to the restaurant one Friday evening. Clean shirt. Nice shoes. He smiled at her when she brought water. Not the kind of smile men usually gave waitresses. A real one. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mercy." "That's beautiful." He came back the next week. And the week after. Always polite. Always asking about her day. Always leaving a tip. One evening, he waited outside after her shift. "Can I walk you to the bus stop?" She said yes. They talked. He worked in logistics. Had dreams of his own company. Went to church every Sunday. Quoted scripture. "God has plans for us," he said. "We just have to be patient." Mercy wanted to believe him. He took her to his church in Sourulaire. Introduced her to his friends. Held her hand during worship. "I'm going to marry you properly," he told her. "Let me save for the bride price first." Mercy felt something she hadn't felt since her mother died. Hope. Then she missed her period. At first, she thought it was stress. But when she missed the second month, she went to a clinic in Oja. The test came back positive. "Congratulations," the nurse said. "About 8 weeks." Mercy sat in the waiting room, trying to breathe. They weren't married. But Adebayo loved her. He would understand. That evening, she went to his apartment. "I have news," she said. "Me too. You first." "I'm pregnant." His smile stayed, but something in his eyes changed. "That's wonderful. This is a blessing." They went to the clinic together the next week. The doctor did an ultrasound. Then she said something that made his hand tighten. "It's twins." He didn't say anything. Just nodded. Kissed her forehead. Told her everything would be fine. 3 days later, his phone stopped working. Mercy went to his apartment. A different man opened the door. "I'm looking for Adebayo." The man shook his head. "He moved out 3 days ago." "Where did he go?" "I don't know. I'm the new tenant." She called his friends. They all said the same thing. "We haven't seen him. He didn't tell us." "Sorry, we can't help." Mercy stood outside that empty apartment and understood. She was alone. Completely alone. She went back to work the next day. Her uniform still fit. Nobody knew yet. But they would soon. 2 weeks later, a customer whispered while Mercy cleared their table. "Pregnant and no husband. Shame." Mr. Carter watched her from across the room. His face showed exactly what he thought. Lagos had finally shown its true face. And the worst was still coming. Mercy woke at 4 in the morning on a storage room floor, her back screaming. She couldn't stretch. The boxes left no room. Her pregnant belly pressed against cold concrete. The babies kicked hard, angry at the world already. 7 months pregnant. Living like an animal. 2 months after Adebayo disappeared, her landlord came. "Your rent is 3 weeks late." "I'll have it next week." "You said that last time." 2 days. She didn't have it. Mr. Carter had cut her shifts in half. Customers complained when they saw her belly. Some refused her service. "I don't want a pregnant girl touching my food," one woman said loud enough for everyone to hear. The landlord didn't care. 2 days. Or your things go outside. On day 3, she came home to find her belongings on the street. Her mattress. Her clothes. Her mother's photo. Everything. That's when Omawunmi found her. Omawunmi was a cleaner at Golden Crown Lounge. 52. A widow. Lost her husband and son in a car accident 5 years ago. She saw Mercy crying on the roadside. "Sister, what happened?" Mercy told her everything. Omawunmi didn't judge. Didn't ask about the father. Didn't call her careless like everyone else. "Come. I know a place." The church in Oja had a storage room. The pastor let people sleep there sometimes. Just concrete floor and boxes of old Bibles and broken chairs. But it was something. Omawunmi brought food when she could. Leftover rice. Bread. Sometimes fruit. You need to eat for those babies. At night, after shifts, she would sit with Mercy and pray. "God hasn't forgotten you. This pain is not the end." Mercy wanted to believe her. But every day made it harder. At 7 months, her uniform didn't fit. She tried to hide her belly, but everyone could see. Mr. Carter called her to his office. "This is a high-class establishment. Customers don't come here to see suffering. I'm working hard. I don't complain. You don't have to. Your condition speaks for itself." He looked at her stomach with disgust. "Cover that properly." or resign. He cut her shifts more. 3 days instead of 5. Barely enough to eat. Other staff saw what was happening. Nobody said anything. In Lagos, you don't risk your job for someone else's problems. But Omowunmi stayed. Every day, she checked on Mercy. Made sure she ate. Made sure she didn't give up. You're stronger than you know. Then one morning, Mr. Carter gathered the staff. We have a special event this Saturday. Simeon Johnson is hosting a private dinner at his mansion. He's hired us. The staff whispered. Simeon Johnson was one of the richest men in Lagos. Big tips. Maybe bonuses. Everyone works this event. No exceptions. Mercy raised her hand slowly. Sir, can I please not go? I'm 7 months. Did I say exceptions? Everyone works. If you collapse, don't stain my floor. The staff laughed. Not loud, but enough. That night, Mercy knelt in the storage room. Her knees hurt. Her back hurt. Everything hurt. She felt the baby's kick. Please, just let me survive this. Omowunmi came before leaving. Don't go tomorrow. I have a bad feeling. I need the money. Money is not worth your life. But Mercy had no choice. She needed every naira. The babies would come soon. Hospital bills. Baby clothes. Formula. She had to go. What she didn't know was that one night would change everything. That the man who destroyed her would also be the one who saved her. Mercy lay on the ground outside the mansion gate, rain mixing with tears on her face, her uniform ripped and her pregnant belly exposed. Somewhere inside, people were still laughing. She didn't know how she would get up or where she would go. To understand how she ended up here, we go back 2 hours. The Simeon Johnson mansion in Lekki Phase 1 looked like a palace when she arrived at 6. The driveway was filled with luxury cars, Range Rovers, Mercedes, Bentleys, each worth more than she would make in her life. Security checked the staff like criminals, searching bags, asking for ID, making them sign papers. Her uniform was too tight and she could barely breathe as the buttons strained against her belly. There was no hiding her condition now. Inside, marble floors reflected everything, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, gold decorations everywhere. Guests arrived in designer clothes, talking about oil deals and government contracts and vacation homes in Dubai. She moved through the crowd with drinks, trying to be invisible, trying not to exist. Simeon Johnson stood in the center like a king. Large man, loud voice, and everyone listened when he spoke. Everyone laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. He snapped his fingers at staff when he needed something, never saying please or thank you, just pointing. Near the back, a younger man watched with disgust on his face. Joshua, Simeon's son. He walked up to his father and asked quietly, "Do you have to treat them like that?" "Like what?" Simeon didn't look at him. "Like slaves. They are human beings." Simeon turned, eyes cold. "This is business. Sentiment is for the poor. These are people, not tools. Then leave if you're so righteous. I didn't build this empire by being soft." Joshua stood there for a moment, then walked out. Nobody noticed and nobody cared. The heat was terrible and Mercy had been on her feet for 2 hours without eating since morning. Her head felt light and her vision blurred as she carried champagne glasses through the crowd. Her hands shook and the tray felt heavier. She tried to hold on, but her fingers wouldn't grip. The tray slipped. Glass shattered across marble and the music stopped. Every conversation died as everyone turned to look at her standing frozen, mouth open but no words coming. "Security." Mr. Carter's voice cut through. "Remove this disgrace now." 2 guards grabbed her arms as she begged. "Please, I'm sorry, my babies." "Get her out." They dragged her toward the door, her feet scraping the floor as she tried to pull away, but they held too tight. Her uniform ripped as they pulled her outside and the buttons popped, exposing her belly to everyone. Guests pulled out phones, some recording, some taking photos, a few laughing. Omowunmi ran forward shouting, "Leave her alone," but a guard pushed her back hard. Nobody else moved. They just watched. At the gate, guards threw her outside and the metal gate slammed shut. She hit the ground and lay there as rain started and traffic rushed past on Lekki Expressway. Hundreds of cars, but nobody stopped. Eventually, she pulled herself up and crawled to a bus stop, sitting on the bench and holding her stomach where the babies moved inside, kicking, still alive. "God," she whispered into the rain, "if you're there, Why does everyone hate us? That's when headlights stopped in front of her and a man stepped out. Her life was about to take a turn she never saw coming. The hospital room was warm and clean, and for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid someone would throw her out. But she still didn't understand why this stranger was helping her, and that made her more nervous than grateful. To understand how she got here, we go back 3 hours to that bus stop. Joshua had been walking for 20 minutes after leaving his father's mansion, anger still burning from their argument. He'd seen how staff were treated his whole life, but tonight something broke inside him. He was heading back for his car when he saw her at the bus stop, soaked and shaking, holding her pregnant belly like she was protecting something precious. For a moment, he almost kept walking. In Lagos, you learn not to get involved. But then he saw the torn uniform and how she sat hunched over, and he couldn't walk past. He approached slowly. "Madam, are you all right?" She looked up with eyes full of fear and exhaustion. He wore jeans and a plain shirt, nothing fancy, no bodyguards, no driver. "What do you want from me?" Her voice was small and broken. "Nothing. I just think you need help." She laughed, but it wasn't happy. "Nobody helps for free in Lagos." "I know. But you're hurt and it's raining. Let me at least take you somewhere safe." She was too tired to argue and too broken to lie. The words spilled out, how she'd been thrown out while pregnant, how she had no home and no money, how the babies were due in weeks and she had nothing ready. He listened without interrupting, without judging, without offering cheap advice. He just listened like her words mattered. "Let me take you to a hospital. Just for a check. Make sure you and the babies are okay." She hesitated because every instinct told her to run, but her body was in too much pain to care. He drove her to Lagoon Hospital in Apapa, walked straight to registration, and paid a deposit in cash without asking her name or for repayment. The doctor examined her and said the babies were fine, but she was malnourished and needed rest. Real rest, not concrete floors. After the examination, he took her to a small apartment near the hospital. One room, a bed, a small kitchen, basic furniture, but clean and safe and more than she'd had in months. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, standing in the doorway like she might need to run. "You don't even know me." He looked at her before answering. "Maybe that's exactly why I can." She didn't understand but was too exhausted to ask more. He left groceries on the counter, bread, eggs, milk, rice, fruit, and wrote his phone number on paper. "Call if you need anything. No strings attached." Then he left. She stood alone, staring at the food, the clean bed, the locked door nobody could break through. She made herself a meal, her first hot food in weeks, and ate slowly, tasting every bite. That night, she slept without fear for the first time in months. But even as she slept, questions filled her mind. Who was this man? He spoke like someone educated, wore an expensive watch she'd noticed when he wrote his number, drove a nice car. Rich people didn't help poor people like this, not in her experience. What she didn't know was that her helper carried a name she would recognize, and a shame he couldn't escape. Joshua sat alone in his Ikoyi apartment at 3 in the morning, staring at his phone and wondering if he should have told her the truth. But how do you tell someone that your father is the man who destroyed her life? To understand why he couldn't sleep, we need to go back to how he became this man, carrying guilt like a stone in his chest. He grew up watching his father treat workers like tools that could be replaced. Drivers fired for being 5 minutes late, maids humiliated for breaking a glass, gardeners sent away without pay for small mistakes. His mother used to stop it when she was alive, used to say these are people, not machines. But she died when he was 12, and after that, his father became even harder. He studied business in London, came back to Lagos hoping he could change things from the inside, but every time he tried, his father said the same thing. "You're too soft for this world." The Johnson name opened every door in Lagos, but it burned his conscience every time he walked through one. Now he sat in his apartment wrestling with a question that had no good answer. If he'd stayed at that event instead of walking out, could he have stopped what happened to her? Could he have told the security guards to let her rest instead of throwing her out like trash? He'd been checking on her every few days since that night, bringing supplies, more groceries, vitamins the doctor recommended, blankets because the apartment got cold at night. He never stayed long and never asked personal questions because he didn't want her to feel like she owed him anything. She was starting to trust him. he could tell. She opened the door faster now when he knocked, didn't look at him with fear anymore. Other men in her life had wanted something from her, but he just helped and left. One afternoon when he brought supplies, Omawanmi was there. She'd found her through the church network and had come to check on her. "Sister," she'd said, hugging her tight. "I've been so worried. When you didn't come back to work, I thought." She stopped when she saw the apartment, the food, the safety. After he left, he heard Omawanmi through the door. "Be careful. Rich men don't help for free." "He hasn't asked for anything," she said. "Yet," Omawanmi replied. "Stay sharp." The next time he came, bringing baby clothes and diapers, she asked him directly, "Who are you really?" He froze with the bags in his hands. This was the moment. He could tell her everything, that he was Simeon Johnson's son, that he'd been at that event, that he'd walked out before she was humiliated but came back to find her. "Someone trying to do the right thing," he said instead. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. He was afraid that if she knew who he really was, she'd refuse his help. She'd see the Johnson name and remember the worst night of her life, and everything he was trying to do would mean nothing. Meanwhile, at Golden Crown Lounge, Mr. Carter was bragging to other restaurant owners about the Simeon Johnson event, about how successful it had been, how impressed the billionaire was with their service. The staff who'd been there stayed silent about what happened to her, and though several of them still had the video on their phones, that terrible footage of a pregnant woman being dragged across pavement, nobody dared post it. In Lagos, you don't cross men like Simeon Johnson and keep your job. Her due date was getting closer. 2 more weeks, maybe 3. The doctor said the twins could come any time now. His secret was growing heavier every day, and he knew eventually she would find out the truth. What he didn't know was that in 2 weeks, everything would explode. The twins would come early, the truth would surface, and he would have to choose between his father's empire and his own soul. The hospital corridor smelled like disinfectant and fear, and Joshua stood outside the NICU watching 2 tiny babies fighting for their lives through the glass. He'd just paid over ₦1 million to keep them alive, and the woman who gave birth to them still didn't know his last name. To understand how he got here, we go back 12 hours. It was past midnight when his phone rang. Heavy rain was flooding Lagos streets, the kind that turns roads into rivers. "The babies are coming," she said, voice shaking. "I'm alone and I don't know what to do." He didn't ask questions. He drove through flooded roads from Ikoyi to Oja, water reaching halfway up his doors, other cars abandoned. It took 40 minutes to make a 20-minute drive. When he got to her apartment, she was on the floor holding her stomach, face wet with sweat and tears. "It's too early. They are not supposed to come yet." He helped her to his car and drove to Lagoon Hospital, running red lights, honking at anyone in the way. She held his hand so tight it hurt, crying out with each contraction. At the hospital, nurses rushed her to emergency. Doctors came quickly, faces serious. 36 weeks was too early for twins. Complications were possible. He sat with her during preparation, holding her hand while she cried. "I wish my mother was here." "You're not alone. I'm here." The nurses kept calling him Daddy and asking if it was his first time. He didn't correct them. Now wasn't the time. The boy came first just before dawn. The doctor said, "It's a boy," but he didn't cry. They rushed him to a table and worked on him while she screamed, "Is he alive? Please tell me he's alive." Then he cried, weak and small, but alive. She named him Samuel. "It means God has heard," she whispered. The girl came 10 minutes later, even smaller than her brother. She cried immediately, angry at being brought into this world too soon. Hope. Her name is Hope. But both babies were struggling to breathe. Their lungs weren't fully developed. The doctors took them straight to NICU and put them in incubators. That's when the finance officer came with papers. The twins will need NICU for at least 3 weeks. The cost is 850,000 naira per week for both incubators. We need 50% deposit by morning. 1.25 million naira. She looked at the officer like the world was ending. "I don't have that kind of money," she said, voice breaking. Joshua stepped outside and made calls. He had enough in his personal account. But using family money would alert his father, and questions would follow. He had 2 choices, reveal who he was now, or pay from his savings and deal with consequences later. He chose the second option. When he came back, he told her, "It's handled. Focus on healing." "How?" she asked, staring at him. "Who are you really?" "Someone who believes these babies deserve a chance." She was too exhausted to push for more answers, but he could see suspicion growing in her eyes. Later, after she fell asleep and the babies were stable in their incubators, he stood in the corridor and his phone rang. It was his father. He ignored the call. Behind him, the hospital finance officer was checking payment records on her computer. Her eyes stopped on one name, Johnson. The money was paid. The twins were safe. But in Lagos, secrets don't stay buried, especially when they carry the name Johnson. She screamed at him to get out, and he stood there with tears in his eyes, unable to defend himself because everything she said was true. 3 days ago, he'd held her hand while she gave birth. Now she wanted him gone forever. To understand how it fell apart, we go back 6 hours. The twins were stabilizing, getting stronger every day. She was recovering well. Omowanmi had come with food and prayers, thanking God for 2 healthy babies. He came that afternoon with clothes for the twins, tiny shirts and blankets, soft things for their delicate skin. She watched him through the window as he looked at Samuel and Hope with something like love on his face. He'd been so gentle, so consistent. But she could tell he was hiding something. That's when the hospital administrator walked up to him. "Mr. Johnson," the woman said clearly, "your father's office called about the bill. They want to confirm the payment arrangement." She heard it from inside her room. Her head turned sharply. "Johnson, your father." His face changed in an instant. All color drained away. Omowanmi stood up, eyes wide. She got out of bed and walked to the door, legs still weak but anger making her strong. "Who is your father?" she demanded. He opened his mouth but no words came. Omowanmi looked at him closely, and suddenly her face changed. "Jesus. You're Simeon Johnson's son." She felt the room spin. "The man who had me thrown out like trash. That's your father." "Yes," he finally said, barely a whisper. "But I left that event before you were hurt. I walked out because I couldn't watch." "You left?" She was shouting now. "You knew what kind of man he was and you just left." "I came back. I found you at the bus stop. So this was guilt. Pity. Rich boy playing savior to feel better about his father's sins. No. This was me trying to be different." "Different?" She stepped closer, finger pointing at his chest. "You let me trust you. You held my hand while I gave birth. You looked me in the eye and never told me who you really were. I was afraid you'd refuse my help. You think money fixes what your family did to me." Tears streamed down her face. "You think paying for a hospital room erases the night I was dragged across pavement while people laughed. I never wanted to be like him," he said, voice breaking. "But you are him," she said, each word sharp as a knife. "You carry his name. You use his money. You hide behind lies just like he hides behind power. Please, get out. Get out of my life." He tried to explain, but she turned away, called for nurses, told them she didn't want him in her room anymore. He stood there for a moment, looking at her back, then walked out. In the parking lot, he sat in his car and made a decision. He was done hiding, done letting his father destroy innocent people. He drove to Banana Island, to the mansion where it all started. Meanwhile, at a small apartment in Surulere, a Golden Crown staff member sat with her phone, watching the news show Simeon Johnson celebrating a new contract, smiling like he owned the world. She was Omowanmi's cousin, and she still had the video. She'd been too afraid to post it before. But watching him celebrate while the woman he'd destroyed fought to keep her babies alive was too much. She opened Twitter and uploaded the video with one caption. "This is how billionaires treat pregnant women. #Justice for Mercy #Simeon Johnson exposed." Within 2 hours, it had 50,000 views. Father and son faced each other across a desk built on cruelty, and only one would walk away with their name intact. The video had 500,000 views by the time Joshua walked into his father's study, and the whole country was watching a billionaire's empire begin to crumble. But that wasn't what made his father angry. What made him angry was that his own son had chosen the other side. To understand the war that happened in that room, we go back 2 hours. Joshua walked into the Banana Island mansion and found his father waiting, phone in hand, face red with rage. "You paid for that woman's bills with MY money." My money. I earned it. And her name is Mercy. She's nobody. A pregnant prostitute looking for a payday. She's a human being your event destroyed. His father laughed, but it was cold. My event. She dropped a tray. She couldn't do her job. That's not my problem. You had her dragged across pavement while she was pregnant. People filmed it and laughed. That's your problem now. The video was everywhere. 500,000 views and climbing. Simeon Johnson exposed trending nationwide. Feminist groups organizing protests. Churches condemning the treatment. News stations calling for comment. His father stood and walked to the window. I'll have my lawyers handle this. Pay whoever posted it. Threaten them. This will be gone by tomorrow. You can't buy your way out of this one. I've bought my way out of worse. Not this time, Joshua said, voice steady and stronger than it had ever been in this room. I'm going public. His father turned around slowly. What did you say? I'm calling a press conference. I'm telling them everything. I'm resigning from all family businesses. And I'm redirecting my inheritance to support abused workers and single mothers. For a moment, his father just stared at him. Then he said quietly, You'll be nothing without me. Maybe. But I'd rather be nothing than be you. His father's face went hard as stone. Get out of my house. 3 hours later, Joshua stood in front of cameras and microphones. My name is Joshua Johnson. I am Simeon Johnson's son. I witnessed the culture of cruelty in my father's world, and I'm ashamed I didn't stop it sooner. Today, I'm resigning from all family businesses and redirecting my inheritance to help the people my family has hurt. By evening, his father had issued his own statement. Joshua Johnson is no longer my son or heir. His actions are his own. The Johnson empire continues. But the damage was done. Sponsors withdrew from Golden Crown Lounge. Health inspectors suddenly found violations. Mr. Carter was under investigation for labor abuse. The restaurant was forced to shut down. Mr. Carter disappeared. Some said he fled to Benin Republic. His father's PR team forced him to issue an apology. It was hollow and corporate, full of words like regrettable incident and moving forward. The public wasn't buying it. International partners started reconsidering contracts. At the hospital, she watched it all on her phone with Omawanmi beside her. He lost everything, she said quietly. That boy didn't have to do any of this, Omawanmi said. He chose truth over money. That's rare. But he lied to me. He did. And then he gave up everything to make it right. That's rarer. The twins were released from NICU that afternoon, healthy and strong. Samuel and Hope, both breathing on their own, both crying with healthy lungs. She was discharged the next day. 2 days later, a woman from Joshua's foundation came to see her. Not him. He knew better. The woman offered her a business loan, processed through intermediaries, no strings attached. We help single mothers start small businesses. Mr. Johnson wanted to make sure you had options. She stood there holding her babies and had a choice: accept help and start over, or walk away from everything connected to the Johnson name, including the only man who'd ever treated her with real dignity. The door opened and Adebayo walked in, dressed well and confident, like he'd never disappeared when she needed him most. 6 months had passed since she gave birth, and now she stood behind her own counter, strong and successful, watching the man who abandoned her try to walk back into her life. But this time, she had a choice. To understand how she got here, we need to see what those 6 months built. Hope's place sat on a quiet street in Oja, small but clean, always full. She stood behind the counter most days, Samuel and Hope playing in a playpen nearby. She employed 5 women, single mothers, widows, women's society had rejected, and gave them fair wages and respect. Omawanmi worked as manager, finally earning dignity after years of cleaning floors. The business thrived because it was built on something real. The community supported it. The media featured it as a symbol of resilience. Her story inspired other women who thought they had no way out. She'd done it without Adebayo, without his promises, without his excuses. And now here he was, standing in her cafe like the past hadn't happened. Mercy, he said, smiling. I heard about your success on social media. I'm so proud of you. She didn't smile back. I'm sorry. I was young. I was scared. But I'm ready now. Let me meet my children. Let me be their father. She looked at Samuel and Hope in their playpen, healthy and laughing, faces bright with life. Then she looked at Adebayo, the man who vanished when she needed him, who never called when she was homeless, who wasn't there when she gave birth alone. When she spoke, there was no anger. Just clarity. No. Mercy, please. You don't get to come back when the storm is over. These children have never known you. They won't start now. But I'm their father. You're the man who got me pregnant. That's not the same thing. I was scared. So was I. But I stayed. He tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to make her understand how hard it had been for him. She listened without interrupting, then said quietly, "You made your choice. I made mine. We're fine." He stood there, realizing he had no power here, then walked out. She didn't watch him go. She just returned to serving customers. Across the street, Joshua sat in his car like he did sometimes, watching from a distance. He never came in, never announced himself. His foundation supported her business anonymously. He'd rebuilt his life too, smaller apartment, honest work, clean conscience. She knew he was there. She'd seen his car before. She wasn't ready for reconciliation, but she wasn't angry anymore. She understood now that he'd chosen truth over comfort, and that meant something. At closing time, she locked the door and walked home with the twins asleep in their stroller. She passed his car and their eyes met briefly. She gave a small nod. He nodded back. Nothing more. She continued walking. Later, at home, she sat with Samuel and Hope while they played with simple toys. On the wall hung a photo of her mother from Ijebu Ode. "Mama," she whispered, "we made it." In Lagos, a city that takes more than it gives, she had finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not mercy from others, but the strength to give it to herself. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more true stories of resilience, justice, and second chances. And remember, your life matters, no matter what anyone else says.